me clarify some earlier statements that will be a part 2 to the video about domestic insurgency in America and where would it go anywhere. I made the statement that they could shut off the power for a year. Well, you wouldn't do that nationwide. No. What you would do, because the very nature of insurgency is that whatever beef the insurgents have against the U.S. government or the central government, they have to gain power somewhere. Maybe a town, maybe a city, maybe a state. But they've got to gain power to where the local police are like, you know what, we support this, we accept this. You've got to have, you got to have that. You have to have the citizens accept it. You have to have a lot. There's a lot to that. Or you're just terrorists. The nature of insurgency is saying that we don't like what the federal government's doing. So we're going to wage war in an organized manner against the federal government. Otherwise, it's a bunch of bumpkins in the woods with rifles and Confederate flags. So, this blackout I proposed, this would be on certain regions. I said to you guys, Americans aren't tough. There's nothing tough about America. America just, you know what America was the last man standing after World War II. That was it. Nothing tough about America. There may have been something tough 50, 60 years ago, but there is not now. America had an advantage. And that advantage is slowly coming to an end. I think the rest of the world sees that. I think America has burned up whatever goodwill it had from World War II, from the Lend-Lease and Normandy and, you know, all the stuff that happened, that Americans risked their lives, gave their lives to uphold democracy. I think that you would I was talking about shutting out the power, shutting off the water, shutting off institutions. I mean to regions. I'm talking about regions of America that would choose to rebel against the U.S. government. And I was saying that would be the response. And I was speaking in regards to a comment on Quora where they in essence said that if you that people would follow the domestic terrorists. And I was making the point to you that it's not likely. That's the cases, the examples they gave were so different because those are people who are already angry, people who have already been at war. I think that you could shut down any kind of insurrection without a shot fired. And I mentioned PS4, video games. Shut the power off for a year. Shut it off. Internet, cell phone, shut it off for a year. That's all it takes. Americans ain't tough. Ain't nothing tough about it. Maybe a month, maybe a couple of weeks, a year, it'll be over with. Because all you got to do is say, look, we know the whole country. There's regions of the countries that are of the country that are still reasonable, that are still lawful, and we would be making sure they get food and water to be living. But if you're living in these terrorist regions and your wish is to wage war against the federal government, we're going to shut you off. You no longer are Americans. In fact, I think that's what insurrection is saying that you forfeit the right to be an American because you're fighting actively against the federal government. You see? That's what I meant. And I think that would be a hell of a tactic. Shutting off the food, cutting off any access to those regions. I think that would be very successful. A very successful measure if we are dealing with people who just say, fuck it, we want to go over to the federal government. Also, I think things have already got to be pretty bad. Like, I think the rednecks are just mad about losing Trump. But they haven't lost anything else. If you talk about the Iraq war, you're literally talking about, we're going to destroy your government because we don't like Saddam Hussein. That's different. It would be like this when I left home. What I was thinking about. Imagine if space aliens landed tomorrow. And they said, America's got a problem with weapons. A gun problem. So we're going to take away all your guns. People wouldn't accept that. even people who would say, yeah, we have a problem with guns in America, those people still would not accept giving up their weapons to a foreign, unknown entity. Same thing with the U.S. government, because they just said, like, the Baptist Party out. They basically just removed the whole government. That's what happened in Iraq. You were going to war with the remnants of that government. You see, America has not had it happen. There's nothing in America even close to that, or has happened even close to that. It's just white people angry because they president lost. They don't want to accept it. He gave them the right to be racist. He gave them the right to be as nasty and vicious as they wanted to be. That's all it is. They didn't want to accept it. That's what it comes down to. There's nothing disadvantageous about it. Biden is not a communist, and Biden is not a radical. He's never been a radical. Look, I just think the very notion is ridiculous of domestic terrorism. We're living in a society that is getting browner. Society is becoming more urban. They're not. Look, this is the other good thing about it. Alex Jones talked about one time. He talked about years ago that there should be no militias, and that all the militias should be like wearing suits and working at homeless shelters. And what he was talking about was creating goodwill in the communities. Because when people think about a militiaman, they think about some big fat pig running around with a gun and a Confederate flag. Alex Jones was saying, no, this is years ago, we have to become reasonable and acceptable to a changing demographic. See, really, Alex Jones, people like him, I realize now they're very dangerous. Not because of the violence, but because they recognized years ago that you can't do that. You're gonna scare a lot of people who might, agree with you on many issues, but are never gonna accept the aspects that you're bringing to the table. See, these real violent cats, the ones who go to the Capitol and all that, we know what they are. That's what you expect. The racist tattoos, you expect that shit. I think that what he was talking about, what he's putting forward, is basically the notion of the next generation and of becoming acceptable to a changing demographic, recognizing that it can't be about racial. You can still be white supremacist and not be a racist. And it sounds crazy, but it's not. Alex Jones knew that years ago, and that's what the propaganda was about for him. Changing the narrative, so the wearing the polo shirts and the Dockers and all that kind of stuff, Docksiders, whatever, the shoes, all that stuff, about becoming acceptable. That's what it's about. So, I think that that's something that has not happened. They have not calmed down. I think the Capitol stuff showed you that they're as violent and vicious as ever. It was all an act, which is good, because my fear was always them becoming normalized and people saying, well, they're not that bad, we should pray for them, and they're American. No, they're not. They're Americans too. No, they're not. These are terrorists. They're on their way to start killing people, and they showed you that. I think that the viciousness and the vile nature of domestic terrorism in America has, people aren't going to back that. Average people are not going to support that. Average people are not going to back insurrection. I don't think so. First of all, things have to get kind of desperate for folks to do that, but still, it's not going to happen. They shut out the power and stuff. Not that the bumpkins are going to come to our side and the bumpkins are going to be like, oh, no, it's that if you cut the power off and you got people in these regions, these average teenagers, guys that want to play games 6 hours a day, they're not gonna say, hey, I'm willing to take this massive hit to my life so you can be a racist. That's not going to happen. They're going to turn you in. They're going to turn them in. It's no question. It's a matter of time. And you can put some money on the table. Be like, hey, we'll give you some food. We'll bring you in. They could do like Hunger Games and have like cities and have cities blocked off and shit. If the government wanted to get these guys, they could do it. Thank you for listening.